Well, welcome everybody to this double celebration of Hanging Loose issue number 114 and Pablo Medina's wonderful new poetry collection. So the way I think what we're going to do is we have 5 local contributors, poets to the magazine. So I'm going to ask each of them to read one poem, come up and read one poem each. I'll introduce them all first as a group, and then they can just identify themselves as they stand up. And then Pablo will follow with a reading from his new book. I wanted to say that so Hanging Loose. I want to begin by reading a poem by Jack Anderson, whose his memorial service is going to be Saturday night in Manhattan. Jack passed away in October of 2023. And Jack is probably the last poet who appeared in the very first issue of Hanging Loose in 1966. And his very last poem is in this issue. He published over the years 80 poems in Hanging Loose, for poetry, full poetry collections by Hanging Loose. He had several books by other publishers as well. His New York Times obituary focused on the fact that he was for like 3 or 4 decades was a New York Times dance critic. Wrote over 4,000 reviews and articles for the Times. He was also a historian of dance, wrote a definitive biography of the Ballet Russe, Monte Carlo. And at the end of his obituary in the Times, of course, they said, and he was also a poet. So I'd like to reverse that today and say he was primarily a poet. He always thought of himself as a poet. And I want to read just one poem of his as a way of kind of kicking things off. Jack was known for his kind of dry wit. This is a poem from The Clouds of That Country. I think the first book that Hanging was published of his back in the 80s. It's called Spunk. It's a word I never use. Although sometimes I want to say, so-and-so's really got it. And yet I don't say it because I know what it can mean. Here in America, it's a synonym for pluck. But in England, it's a dirty word that 13-year-olds like because it makes them giggle, and they use it all the time for just about a year until they're 14, when they've acquired a vocabulary of even dirtier words. But because of that year, when it's the favorite dirty word, no Englishman can ever say it again, even when he really means pluck. And thus the word lies unused, soiled by pimply schoolboys. And I can't use it either, even though I'm not English, because the person I'm talking to just might be English, or might at least know how the English use the word, and therefore suspect me of obscene double meanings. Nor do I have any notion of what that word means to Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, or to anyone else in the English-speaking world. So just to be safe, I always say pluck. It sounds dirty. So our 5 readers Hanging Loose, I've lived here 58 years. People still think I live in New York because I'm associated with Hanging Loose, which is everybody thinks is the New York magazine, but far from it. And so I'm really happy that we have 5 local contributors to share their work with us today. So the first, I'm going to read off their names and their bios, and then I'll let them come up one at a time. The first is Jennifer Barber, whose most recent collection is The Sliding Boat Our Bodies Made, from WordPress. She's the co-author with Fred Marchand and Jessica Greenbaum of the anthology Tree Lines, 21st Century American Poems, And she's the editor-in-chief of the literary journal Salamander. She's retired now, but from 1992 until 2018, she was at the helm of Salamander, a terrific local literary magazine. Deborah Cash lives a few blocks from me, just over the line in Belmont. Her poems are selections from her work in progress that she's going to read the one tonight. She's been published in Bumblebee's Divan, Poems Along the Path of Spain's Golden Age. That's the selection. Others have appeared in Persimmon Tree, Poetica Magazine, and the Open Sitar Project. She's the executive director of the Boston Dance Alliance. Wendy Drexler, another Belmonter, is a recipient of the Mass Cultural Council's 2022 fellowship. Her fourth collection, Notes from the Column of Memory, has just appeared. And she's been working at the New Mission High School in Hyde Park as poet in residence, working with teenagers there, and as a programming coordinator for the New England Poetry Club. Jennifer Martelli, from the North Shore, is author of The Queen of Queens, forthcoming from, it's already out from Bordighera Press. When we wrote this biography, it was forthcoming. My Tarantella was selected as a 2019 Best Read by the Mass Center for the Book. And she's a finalist for the Housatonic Book Award. She's the poetry editor of Mom Egg Review. Lynn Moon was a food service worker for 13 years, and she now works in a labor union. Her poems have appeared in Beloit Poetry Journal, Agni, Claw and Blossom, 86 Logic, and elsewhere. Originally from Malaysia, she now lives near Boston, also in the North Shore, sort of. Malden. Okay, I think that's everything sort of north of. Like New York is thinking about everything west of the Hudson, you know. And finally, Pui-Ying Wong is the author of 3 poetry collections. Pui lives in Cambridge. The Feast, An Emigrant's Winter, and Yellow Plum Season. Her poems have appeared in Plowshares, Prairie Schooner, Plume Poetry, Zone 3, among other places. She lives here in Cambridge with her husband, Tim Sudamont. So welcome to the 5 of you, and break a leg.
Get up there. Musical chairs. Thanks to the Grolier for hosting tonight. And I want to thank the editors of Hanging Loose, Mark Pawlak, Dick Laurie, Jiwon Choi, and Joanna Furman. And just to say what a history the magazine has, and to think of 114 issues is just amazing. So thank you. In this poem I'm about to read, there's the phrase angel of the presence, and that refers to a mysterious figure mentioned in the post-biblical Book of Jubilees. Can you hear? Okay. No? No. Is that better? Okay. This is called Limits of Flight. No plane ever took off from a calculation of mine, but the angel of the presence once came to describe dew at dawn, hoarfrost at night, winter cold and summer heat. And yesterday, in the quiet village I was walking through, stalks of wild iris bloomed among orange butterfly weeds. Bullfrogs warbled in the pond like a chorus of rubber bands. Pollen drifted onto the grass in near weightlessness. Why then did I dream last night of cars and buses hurtling into a gully where I crouched terrified of being struck. The sky narrowed to a slot. I couldn't move my heavy shoes. I waited. There was no choice. The task was to stay. Thank you.
That's what I get for being in the back. Hi, I'm Deborah Cash. It is kind of amazing to be here at the Grolier. I've been in Boston since 1974, and there were a number of years where I spent many hours with Louisa and her dog Pumpkin in this room, and it just is full of associations. So I thank you a lot for doing this. The project I've been working on for a couple of years is in response to a very interesting corpus of poetry that was written in Hebrew and Arabic forms in the area of Al-Andalus in medieval Spain between about 900 and 1200. And some of these poems were not known until the opening of the Geniza, the place where holy books were kept in Fustat in Egypt. And some of them had been known straight through from their earliest publication or, reception. The poems that I've been working on use those forms, but are deliberately contemporary and are deliberately American English. So the one I'm going to read to you is a Khameria, which is a wine poem. I was told by an Arabic speaker that the word comes from the word red, because wine was assumed to be red. The white wine drinkers, you'll have to allow that. But the idea was that there was a whole body of poems that were kind of drinking songs, but were, of course, not set to music in the way we're used to. It's also an acrostic, and it spells out the name of its dedicatee. And the poem itself, because of the way this form works, is a kind of mini portrait. Often those poems were portraits of the patron or of the aristocrat who is in charge of the court where this poet was associated, but this is our friend rather than our patron. He's only our patron when he feeds us. It's a Khameria, drinking song for Dan. Drink, dear friend, this aperitif, and then a splendid Côte d'Aron. Drink alongside cheese that smells like socks and plattered charcuterie that never fed, Malaho Alaki, the musician paid by the Prince of Huesca in a daily ration of kosher meat. Coleman Hawkins' tenor sax escapes your high-def speakers as it soothes the dimming light. What is a tenor saxophone but a shawm made modern, arpeggiated by welling breath? The blood of grapes remains red when the vine is withered brown, and your friendship persists long past the seasons when you and my man cherished other lovers. Sediment sifted to the dregs of the cup might not prophesy, but it remembers much about the bluing summer air nourished by the terroir of laughter.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm Wendy Drexler, and thanks everyone for coming online as well as in person. And I'm honored to be in Hanging Loose. Thank you, to Mark and the other editors for choosing my poem, and I'm honored to be in such fine company with other great poets. Thanks to Grolier also for hosting this. Ode to the man in the parking lot at the Flying Fish restaurant. Thank you for noticing me struggling to back into the last space in the lot, partway blocked by a poorly parked pickup truck. Thank you for that small wave that staves off despair, turns can't into can. Thank you for saying when I roll down the window, it's tight, but you can do it, for your keep going, for circling your hand, for me to turn the wheel, the way playing jacks. I used to circle the red rubber ball with my hand, going around the world, scooping up the silver stars and catching the ball before it bounced. Thank you for raising your hand to signal stop. Thank you for seeing I was in a tight place without knowing how tight, that I dropped my husband off to get us a table and was worrying now if he would find the hostess, if he would insult the hostess, if he would wander down the road, if I should have let him go in by himself, that constant watching and worrying and wrestling and rustling into and out of tight spaces, his mind a tight space. Maybe all it can hold are snowflakes that keep falling and falling again, and I'm the one with a shovel trying to clear a path to get us a table at the Flying Fish and a sip of that good coffee. To hear the waitresses, what can I get you today? And I will say everything, while the man is over there at a table with his wife, not noticing me. And later I realize I should have ordered him a double latte or an espresso. I've read people in Italy or France are doing these random acts of kindness. Though random isn't the point, I dropped the ball. I'm not really blaming myself. Sometimes there are just too many sharp-pointed jacks to pick up. The little red ball bounces and rolls away. Thank you.
Oh, oh. I'm gonna knock something over. Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much, Mark and Dick and Joanna and Joanna for including my work in Hanging Loose. And it's great to see Pablo Medina. It's been over 30 years when I was at Warren Wilson and a lot younger. So it's wonderful. And to read with friends here. Okay. I baked an Easter pie that could kill you. Into my mother's yellow Pyrex bowl, 24 eggs, 4 pounds whole milk ricotta, and torn up cubes of mozzarella, soppressata, hard and soft salami, sheets of prosciutto sliced thin as the glass in a church's windows to let the sun shine through that pink, that brown. I dragged it from the bowl to the rectangle stone baking dish, draped a blanket of dough on top, made a crucifix with the extra as if I were baking a casket. I brushed it all over with egg wash, the most beautiful word in this compound Catholic world. Let's pretend I could do it all over again, be christened, get married. I'd choose egg wash for my name, so I'd never have to wonder, what was my meaning? What was I called when I was untouched? Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynette. Thank you to the editors of Hanging Loose and for Grolier for doing this. It's such a pleasure to read here. I'm just gonna read one poem. Preserved fruit. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Preserved fruit. The request was reasonable. A poem about pears, you said. Something simple, free of charge, fraught with the presence of the fruit you drew. I can imagine running my fingers along the subject's uneven skin, nails getting caught in the rutted curves, peeling away rapidly till I find the polyseeded core. This is your desire for the viewer to sense a slow trickle of dew as she stares at the center of the frame, swallowing. In my mind, the pears are redder than the Webster's dictionary on your desk. Not Basque, not Anjou, but Bartlett. It's too cold for them out here. We have only the usual. Apples, oranges, bananas, perennials, but the pears you keep are colder. Wrapped in loose white shrouds, protected from rot, on the top of the crisper in the fridge, where you've hoarded them for months. Compulsive caretaker. Shone the light on them, recorded them, and laid them back to rest again in the deep recesses of your house. Still life, but hardly radiant anymore. They're starting to resemble the earth. Despite the frigid air, they're soft and pliable, sometimes spontaneously leaking news. I know even though I didn't eat them, I see a complete picture now. And here finally is your poem about pears. It's longer than I expected. Thank you.
Oops. How's this? Okay. Thank you, everyone. The poem I'm about to read appears in this Hanging Loose issue, and it's also in my new collection, Fanning in October. The book just came out from Barrow Street just a few months ago. So Jennifer had a read poem about baking the pie. My poem also has something to do with baking, and it was inspired by the time at the pandemic. I heard everyone was baking during those times, so I try, but anyway, this is the poem here. It's called Sugar High. No more sugar, at least no more than 10 grams per day, or 70 grams a week, which equals to 7 tablespoons. Mix in exit like a twist of orange zest. Add flour, eggs, dashes of baking soda for lift. There is my eyeglasses. Okay. There comes after 30 minutes in the oven a sponge cake, buttery and golden. No one says that's writing itself, but it's still something to look forward to in our ordered stay-at-home mode. No surprise, I'm thinking of the Madeleine, a bed-bound Proust craves, knowing nothing lost can be returned whole. The longing doesn't stop, the madness of it. The head houses fortnight upon fortnight, memory long as a transcontinental train, sober as a judge, all the days slow dancing on the white screen, my mouth laden with cake.
Another round of applause for our 5 readers. Great, thank you so much. Terrific times. Send more. Really wonderful, wonderful to hear, and wonderful to have a consistent presence here in the Boston area as well. I'm really happy about that. So Pablo Medina, Sea of Broken Mirrors. Pablo has been is a novelist, a poet many times over, a translator, and a memoirist. And I think that pretty much covers it. It's not much else you can handle it. Screenwriter, maybe some.
Tried that.
Yeah, yeah. He's published over 20 books, has won countless awards, Guggenheim's, Rockefeller Fellowships, Lillian Wallace, et cetera, et cetera. He's taught at Warren Wilson, Emerson most recently, actually still teaching at Warren Wilson, and divides his time between Cambridge and Vermont, where he has a little farmhouse. And I'm just so pleased. This is his 3rd book that we've published for Hanging Loose, and I think it's the best of the lot. I think the word incantatory keeps coming to my mind, and I think it's an apt description of the power of the poems in this book. His language and imagery is really lush, sometimes surreal, perhaps somewhat influenced by his translation of Lorca's Poet in New York. I always think of that influence back there somewhere. And so I'm just really, and the poems, are wide ranging. There are nature poems. There are a lot of poems about Cuba and his family and the Cuban culture, which remains a strong influence on Pablo. He was born in Cuba, lived there until he was 12, and came to the States. So that's a strong presence as well. He sort of latched onto this form of the canticle, which really kind of propels a line in his poems, I think, in a really powerful way, which you'll discover shortly. So without further ado, Pablo Medina. After 114 issues of the magazine, it's like taking a toll on my knees,
You stole my line after so many books. It's taken a toll on my wrist. No, I'm just kidding. For all of you that don't know, I broke this wrist. I usually blame my dog, but he was just the precipitator of the break. And I also, being here, this is a special place where poetry still matters and holds sway. And Hanging Loose, both the press and the magazine is to a place where poetry holds sway. And we are very, very fortunate to have the two of them in our midst. And I thank you, Mark and James. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I also want to say something about this. We had a hell of a time finding an image for the cover. Elizabeth Hirshon, Lizzie Hirshon, and I worked very hard and couldn't come up with anything. And my wife Cassie and I, she's somewhere around the corner there, we were crossing to Staten Island on the Staten Island ferry. It's one of the few free things to do, and it's a real treat. And so I was looking at the water. I said, well, that's the image I kind of was thinking of when I thought of the title Sea of Broken Mirrors. And I told Cassie, please take a picture of that. And here it is. So, let me start with a poem which is not in the book. It's very recent. My teeth in the new year. No dentist can tell me my teeth are fine. They hurt. They grate and grind, trying to pulverize time. My jaw, stubborn mute. So I'm sorry, my jaw, it's very recent, as I said. My jaw, stubborn mule, or kicked by one, refused it entry. Unswallowed then, time withdrew, my jaw relaxed, but in it remained a scant memory of bone and sinew, what a beginning is, and how the end comes slow or sudden like a cat. I made a list, which I'll probably depart from at some point. I don't know what to call this or how to describe this poem, except to say that this is one of the Vermont poems, one of the first ones that I wrote during we've been living in Vermont since 2017. And so this is one of the first, and probably led to that line of development that you see later on in the book. It's called The Gift. I am a child of the sea, but I've always lived by rivers. They're never the same. When the moon is full, I stop and wonder. When winter comes, I crawl in my cave. I used to love the city, its buildings and clamor. Now I'd rather walk in the woods and bathe in the breath of trees. The watch on my wrist reminds me I will end where I began. Time is a gift unearned. I have a dog named Diego who hates when I leave the house, afraid I'll never return. There is no comforting him. Just now, he shook off a thought he didn't like. He learned that trick from me. My wife sings in the morning and tries to get me to dance. Last winter, we ran naked through the falling snow. I feel blessed. There are things I know, and many more I don't. My dearest friends live far away. I long for them as I long for comfortable clothes. My son has become a man. He looks like my father and acts like me sometimes. The day will come when sleep is a seed, and the seed will grow in ways I do not understand. I would like to raise this a little bit. I don't have any. Okay. Is that good or bad or different? Okay. See, I lost my place. It's been a while since I've given a poetry reading, so I'm a little nervous. I thought I would never be nervous again reading poetry, but it came back, and that's what the feeling anyway. Okay, this poem is called Canticle, Canticle of the Poet. And as Mark was saying, it's it's canticles. What is a canticle? That's a very good question. The only reason I use the term canticle is because I've been reading the canticles in the Old Testament, and so I thought that maybe it would be a good way to approach these poems that I've started writing. Canticle of the Poet. If the poet looked in the mirror, he would see. I too am having trouble with my glasses. If the poet looked in the mirror, he would see his ears inflamed with the past. He would see thin veins on his cheeks like blue rivers in a distant planet. Mouth of a toad straining to catch the poem just beyond his reach. Almost a smile, almost a dance in and out of the mirror's frame. He will see a mockingbird on a fence post, tail flicking up and down before flying off into memory. He will see his sunken lips like an old general's who has learned to trust defeat, a nose that has lost its shape, sharp bone cutting air. He will not see his tongue or his elbows stiff and stony. He will see the mole on his forehead, touch of the woman, his wife would say. Hair tousled, shin thinned out, anguish and peace fighting a battle to the end on the dry bed of his intelligence. Many struggles with others, many more with himself. He will see his wife, her closed and dreaming eyes. It was never about the money or the houses or the sex. He will see the clouds, an empty parking lot. He wishes he could see the island of his birth, a storm out at sea bringing rain, water gathering in puddles on the road to his childhood home. Canticle of the House. I live in a house in the woods, a beautiful house of many rooms, which isn't mine. My father never lived here, or my mother, or my sister, or my son. In these parts, my name is less than nothing, a wisp of wind, not even a thought someone had or didn't. Nearby is a river full of stones. Only when it floods is it a river of water and rapids and foam. Once it overflowed and came in the house. The river never belonged to anyone, though it might have wanted to if it had a brain, and with the brain longing, and with longing regret, as now it has stones and sometimes a lot of water flooding the yards and the basement, where I have photos, mostly black and white, of my father and mother and sister and son who have never lived here, unlike me, who has, though the river's not my river, and the house is not my house. Sometimes, you write a poem, you don't know where on earth it comes from. By that I mean, you may have a thought, you may have what some people call inspiration, an approach to a poem, but where it goes, who knows? It's just no. This is a little bit longer than these ones I've been reading, but I'll try it out on you and see what happens. If I see anybody nodding, I'll just stop. We live by a river. It's called the Rock River, and so it's the Rock River Canticle. Oh yeah, I'm just trying to catch some light. That's why I'm moving around like that. Rock River Canticle. Is that good? Is that good? Good. I have come at last to the flower and the stone, la flor y la piedra, and water of mountain streams, to eat the light of dusk, bark at dying hours, and twist in bed all summer long as the trees burst with wise blood sap, savia sangre savia, indifferent to all save change from the first breeze of the equinox, when leaves fall one by one to the cloud colors presaging winter howls over salt waves of snow and kernels of ice. What voice remains is the clack of branches joining overhead in ribcage canopy. I can enter by memory subway or tenderness taxi or fly over on magic carpet or make my way through the pathways of flies and ecstasy and bitter orange, amarga la naranja. Once I sang of the broken break downhill at enervating speed, speed of ice, hielo veloz. Y no me abandones, lady of the city of the rat, and the city of the brick, and the city of the black bough. No me abandones. Once I was your lesser child, and now I'm not, was a soft ball of expectation looping toward home, and now in my bones I revel in couches of debauch to cover up my crimes against the second person familiar after the lights are out and no one listens, no one swings for pleasure or pines for pain. No me abandones. And so I chose you to exist as a cross, a faith, a curse. You grimaced me and I was born. You moaned and I was expelled. I roamed rivers in search of you. You passed indifferent on the street. You canceled my ticket to the jamboree, the outer life, the life open to wit, dancing on the sphere of fear, bending for a daffodil on which benevolence crept like a knight and like an ant, down one petal, up the next. I move to the trees where I can carve love messages before the gates of you, the metaphors against well-tended gardens, the unvoiced word, the shibboleth that opens many doors, many heads, the middle ones and the wooden ones, to the room of golden thoughts and tintinnabulating bellies, questions under answers, questions cowed by lilies, breathing inside the stars, questions in the dark perplexity of your eyes. The river where I live by day, by night shapes my tongue, my eyelids, man inundated with love fruit, left out in the cold, where I am driven by tenuous affection for you and your chrysalis news of the peony and the cabbage. You make the path to my heart's content, where clouds bounce and eagles dally, magical water, mammal, dripping rain, bolero. I go to you in search of sun, falling leaves, autumn stains and glaze to touch and kiss. No filigrees or arabesques, just a straight humming line. De la piedra al flor, from the flower to the stone. Oh, hell, what is this one? See if you can guess what I'm talking about. I don't often write political poems, but this is a political poem. The crab smell of winter beaches. The crab smell of winter beaches. The crab smell of winter beaches is like a politician's breath who's been campaigning for months without a toothbrush. He's left behind his wife, his startled son, his livid lovers who thought they were the one. The politician has golden hands, blue minnow eyes, a voice that grates like the broken hinges of January. The haze of his pronouncements turns the water gray as spoiled milk. He now, chest outthrust, speaks to legions who are his mirror, squawking seagull in the wind, man, woman, child, his own monument, his own neon sign advertisement.
Sound like Bernie at all.
Home alert hassle. A hassle is a form, an Arabic form. I'm not going to explain what it's how it works. Wonk. Home alert gossip. The place you're in defers to a curving road, and a translation announces you aren't home. Pan is not bread, nariz is not nose, pez is not fish. Language is your only home. Your share of emotional quotients paints a myriad versions of memories home. Love and betrayal cancel the dunes where the river meets the sea away from home. A boat adrift in the swelling waves means no roots, means no sap, means no home. Tranquility made a name of silence. Childhood exists only at home. Dishwasher loaded, classical music playing, wildflowers bundled as if this were home. Yesterday, soup and crackers. Tonight, the moon. Darkness is no place like home. Poet, arise and listen to the cricket's song and the templates of hope, the ruins of home. So the second couplet here, Pan is not bread, nariz is not nose. That's Walter Benjamin's a dictum that pain, the French pain, the French bread, is not equal to brot, the German word for bread. I'll read one more. Cassie in the garden. Cassie's in the garden, planting the flowers that bless us. Unaware, she is the flower with a prickly stem that draws blood. Blood, I said. Look at those petals, red and succulent. Lucifer time. Lucifer and God dancing a sardana, sweating out the many poisons of life. When she's done, she comes back in and drinks a glass of water. She's taking a shower now. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Let's give all the poets who read. We have some books for sale. Poets will be signing books. Thank you so much for attending. If everyone could please move your chairs up against one of the walls, that'd be great. Yeah.